Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Nagic After Dark, which is funny because I actually have the lights on right now so I can read this book. Um, and the book that I'm speaking of is called Aliens Bug Hunt. And what this is basically like a collection of short stories set in the Alien universe. And I figured since the new Alien movie came out, I would read through all of these and do like a little series. Obviously, some stories are going to be longer than others, so they would get like two videos. So, first one I'm going to read is called Chance Encounter by Paul Kupperberg. So, yeah, hope you enjoy. Double or nothing, they don't get the tub off the ground before the next shift, London said. No bet, Gilmore said, only half paying attention to her EVA companion. Okay, you call the time. Leave me alone, London. Gilmore picked up her pace, springing ahead of them in slow motion arcs through the thin atmosphere and less than 1/4 Earth gravity, keeping an eye out for ground obstacles in the tall rust red tree like growths and brown grasses through which they tromped. One of the disadvantages of a full suit extravehicular excursion was that no matter how far ahead of London she pulled, she couldn't escape his voice buzzing in her earpiece. And listening to London was a waste of time. London just liked to talk. She didn't know if it was a nervous habit, the natural patter of the confidence man, or because he loved the sound of his own voice. Probably all the above. But most of the crew aboard the USCSS Typhoon knew to tune out or avoid conversation with the navigation officer. At least those who planned to end this tour with any cash left in their jumpsuits. Come on, what's the big deal, Gilmore? Double or nothing. Except when forced down on the unexplored, low-gravity, biodiverse planet in the Zeta 2 Reticuli system, hope I got that right, for emergency repairs and paired with him for a recon to gather data for the Weyland-Yutani Corporation. It was SOP, explore for exploitable resources, and order the company backed with substantial financial incentives and a call London never failed to answer. Double or nothing what? One of us gotta owe the other for something, he said. When have I ever gambled with you? She said, not bothering to hide her annoyance. London thought about it. Never, he said. Whatever, just keep trying to keep things interesting. Thanks, but this is interesting enough for me. Gilmore came to a stop at the edge of the pale grassy plain. Ahead, the grasses began to give way to a forest of impossibly tall, thin trees that rose even more impossibly high through the crystal clear air into the cloudless sky. She checked the sensor pad strapped to the forearm of her suit. Lines of many colors rose and fell, and numbers flitted across the screen as the device measured and recorded every sort of environmental and atmospheric condition. Of course, none of it meant squat to the warrant officer, but it was all being transmitted back to the Typhoon, where Science Officer Jepson would analyze it at her leisure. Confined by her suit, Gilmore had to lean backwards to follow the lines of the great trees into the sky. Get a load of these things, huh? Bet they're at least twice as tall as the giant redwoods on Earth. How much? London said. Shut up, London. She took a few low-gravity leaps to the nearest tree. It was a little more than a couple of meters wide, but the same low gravity that made it possible for her to cover many times the normal distance with each step allowed that slim structure to grow to almost 1,000 meters tall. Gilmore pushed at the tree. It bent easily under her touch. I don't think these are trees, more like a species of giant grass. You getting a sample? London had already unhooked a tool and sample bag. 10-4. Imagine the size of the tomatoes they're going to be able to grow once they crack this genetic code. Gilmore switched the view on her visor to telescopically scan the area. Crazy world, she said. 22% Earth grav, but it's got an atmosphere, oxygen, water, developed flora. Probably fauna. London carved a sliver of the rust red stalk into the bag. Surprised there's anything at all. Planets with gravity this low don't usually hang on to much atmosphere. Jepson said they're rare. Something to do with orbits, rate of rotation, magnetic field, the escape velocity of oxygen. But once she starts explaining, you better have a PhD or forget it. Hey, London, check it out. London turned to see Gilmore pointing into the distance at the forest. Holy crap. They looked to be some form of aquatic life. Part jellyfish, part squid, great gray and rust behemoths floating through the thin atmosphere from the cover of the giant stalks like creatures deep beneath an earthly sea. The oversized scale of the surrounding landscape made it difficult for Gilmore to gauge the creature's size by eye, but her visor readout tagged them at 60 meters and more. There were too many to count, all moving at a good clip, their trailing tentacles emitting wispy puffs that propelled them along. Look at them go, Gilmore said in awe. They gotta be doing 80, 90 clicks. Yeah, they're sure in a hurry. What do you think you can scare something that big? Something bigger? I hope not. Gilmore started to say maybe this was their normal migratory or grazing behavior when the giant stalks behind the floating creatures began to shudder and sway. The creatures responded to the disturbance by picking up speed and starting to scatter. A black form a fraction of the size of its prey exploded from the forest, springing into the air on massively muscled hindquarters on a trajectory for one of the floaters. The behemoth was struggling to gain altitude, its tentacles throbbing with the effort, but it was too big a target to miss. The black thing, its long tail trailing behind it, landed on its back, anchoring itself with the great claws dug into its rust-colored flesh. Almost immediately, the giant thing faltered in its escape, starting to collapse like a balloon losing air. The attacker was obscured by undulating mounds of flesh, but there was no mistaking the contrails of blood and viscera that followed the great creature in its slow, spiraling descent. Through her helmet, Gilmore more felt than heard a high-pitched vibration that made her wince. She could only imagine it was the floater's death wail. Jesus, London whispered. Yeah, Gilmore said, breathing heavy. All of a sudden, this lightweight world no longer seems so much interesting as dangerous. Come on, let's get back to the ship. By the time Jepson was done syncing the raw sensor data with the feeds from Gilmore and London's body cams, the Typhoon's science officer had clear images of the alien life forms and theories about both. She brought them up on the screen in the mess, where she sat with London, Gilmore, Captain Lawford, and Executive Officer Katz. Let's start with the floaters, Jepson said. There's nothing like them in the ET database, but the odds of there being many low-grav planets capable of sustaining an atmosphere and life at this scale are pretty damn slim. I'll give you 12 to 1, London offered to a chorus of groans. They're significantly higher than that, Jepson said, then turned her eyes on the grinning warrant officer. Besides, you still owe me from last week's poker game. I'll pretend I didn't hear that, the captain said. I've worked out their mass, specific gravity, and I have some educated guesses on their chemistry, means of propulsion, etc. Nothing about the floater's physiognomy suggests that they're in any way aggressive. In fact, everything points to a species that evolved in a relatively benign environment, with no need to develop defensive capabilities. I suppose the low gravity favors the lighter, weaker species against an aggressive species with what one would assume would be a necessarily heavier structure to support its biological armaments. Genetically speaking, it's, Jepson said, starting to wander off down a speculative path before the captain brought her back on point by saying, You say the floaters evolved without any natural enemies. What do you call the thing that attacked one of them? An alien, the science officer said. Jepson tapped her pad, changing the image on the screen from the graceful behemoth to an enlarged freeze frame of the leaper. It's big by our standards, anywhere from 5 to 7 meters, but tiny in comparison to the floaters, and 99% certainly not native to this planet. London whistled. Man, the odds just keep getting better, don't they? Where did it come from? How did it get here? Kat said. Jepson shrugged. Beats me. Tissue samples would go a long way to answering that. Well, unless the Leaper ate that entire floater, we know where we can get a sample of at least one of them, Gilmore said. And the Leaper might have left some of its genetic material on the corpse, Jepson said, sitting up in her seat with excitement. Engineer's mate, Knutson, stuck his head through the hatch and said, Got a message coming in from the company comm, boss. Scrambled and urgent. What the hell do they want now? Lawford grumbled as she pushed back into her seat. Hell if I know, Knudsen said, and was gone. Lawford followed. Two hours later, Gilmore and London were once again suited up and hopping over the rusty landscape. This time they carried assault rifles and were followed by the similarly armed XO and science officer. Lawford had returned to the mess from taking the comm with deep, frown lines creasing her forehead and said to the crew, Jepson's preliminary reports got the company all excited. We must have stumbled across something because I've been ordered to bring back a Leaper specimen, dead or alive, at, quote, any reasonable cost, unquote. I don't like the sound of that, Kat said. Then you're going to have to like this even less. The order's accompanied by a warning to approach the Leapers with extreme caution. Now that sounds like a job that ought to come with a nice, fat, juicy bonus, London said with a grin. Lawford nodded. Then count me in, he said. You're already in. So is Gilmore, Katz, and Jepson. You go too, and everybody goes armed. It worries me when even the company's nervous about what they're sending us into. Gilmore and London retraced their steps to the edge of the plain of high grass that fed into the forest of giant stalks. The hike was a little different than their first across the alien landscape, except for the weapons in their hands and the nervous awareness that they might not have to use them. Keep your eyes open, Gilmore said. She pointed east. The floater was brought down less than a click from here. The Leaper might still be in the area. I'm getting a thermal on the downed floater, Jepson confirmed. Going to take a good long time for that giant to cool down. Anything on the Leaper? Kat said. Can't tell. I'm getting all kinds of bio readings, but I think most of them are from the floater. It's taking a long time to die, but it's really all just a lot of data noise if I don't know what I'm looking for. 20-foot plus monster with an ass and hindquarters like a kangaroo on steroids, London said. Can't miss it. Yeah, I'll try not to, Kat said. Okay, let's go. Stow those pads and check your charge, Jepson. There will be time for science as soon as the area is secured. Alright, guys, that's it for part 1. I don't know how many parts this is going to have. I think it might be 3 at most for this story. I'm going to try to get better at reading. If you made it this far, you can probably tell that I'm just not like the best at reading stories like that, but I'm going to get better as I keep doing it and practicing it. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please check out our Discord and tell us what you like and don't like about the videos. And if you want to see your story mentioned on here, you can email me at nagicafterdark@gmail.com. But yeah, if you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe. See you next time.